Robert Verbruggen from the Manhattan Institute did an extremely deep dive into all of the allegations of police brutality, from lethal force to non-lethal force to bias by white officers and black officers in different geographies. He did a deep dive into this. He published this report. It's called Fatal Police Shootings and Race, a review of the evidence and suggestions for future research. He published this on March 9th of 2022, so almost a year ago. And I want to read, this is actually like a 50-page report or something. We're not going to read even close to that. I just want to read a couple of excerpts from this report that'll give you an idea of the concrete numbers that are reality versus this narrative that we're hearing from the left every time something awful happens to a black person. So first of all, police interactions in general, how often do these happen? When police are called 911, when they arrest someone, how often do police interact with private citizens? Tens of millions of times a year. Tens of millions. There are 10 million arrests that happen every year. In fact, over 1 million arrests happen for assault alone. So just going into that interaction with police, these are violent suspects. These people are allegedly harming other people, but causing bodily harm. That's because there are 16,000 murders every year. 16,000 murders every year in our country. That's not police-involved murders. This is citizen, sometimes I suppose non-citizen, citizen. But I'm not talking about lethal interaction or deadly interactions between police. So I'm not talking about cops who are killed by private citizens or civilians, I should say. Cops who are killed by civilians or civilians who are killed by cops. I'm just talking about the overall murder rate in our country. 16,000 murders, but over 10 million arrests, tens of millions of police-civilian interactions. Just to give context of the bucket of number of police interactions that we're looking at that actually result in use of force in shootings or in death. That's the first context. So of these tens of millions of police interactions a year, police, and this is a direct quote, police fatally shoot about 1,000 people every year. On-duty police fatally shoot about 1,000 people every year. Approximately, this is what Verbruggen writes, approximately a quarter of those killed are black. Black Americans, he writes, are overrepresented among those shot to death by police, accounting for a little over 25% of those killed, despite being only about 13% of the general population. It's that fact right there, the overrepresentation compared to the percentage of population, that the crux of the Black Lives Matter movement's arguments, I guess, if they have any substantiation to their argument, that's what they're talking about when they talk about a higher number of black men. It's not a higher number. It is a larger percentage compared to the percentage of black people in our population as a whole. However, Verbruggen writes, this overrepresentation is in line with and sometimes below many other so-called benchmarks that one might use for comparison, such as the racial breakdowns of arrests, murders, and violent crime offenders as reported by victims in surveys. So what this means is something I said on Monday that we don't often talk about, and the left is unwilling to discuss why it is that there is an overrepresentation of black people who are shot by police. It's not because of racism. It's often because black people commit a higher percentage of crimes compared to their demographic percentage. If you are juxtaposing that against the percentage or against white people committing crimes compared to the percentage of white people in our population.